Lately, I've been doing a lot of videos about dado stacks and dado blades. My last video was all about dado blades, so I figure I may as well show you how to make your own throat plate as well, because you will need one with your dado stack. It's easy to make. Just stay tuned and I'll show you. What the hell is a throat plate anyway? Some of y'all might be asking me this. Some of y'all are familiar with table saws. If you have a table saw, then you should already know what a throat plate is. And if you don't, you need to read your owner's manual. But for those of you that are new and you have no clue what it is the plate that goes around your table saw blade. That opening is wider to allow you to change your blade, adjust your blade, clean out sawdust, put your riving knife in and out, numerous things. You have this wider opening. Well, the plate closes that opening where it's not wide open, and you can adjust it where it's still even with your saw tabletop. Making these is about the same for all of them. They are a little trickier. The easiest is the dado, the one I'm going to talk mostly about, but it's the easiest one to make. But if you're going to be making this one, my suggestion would be go ahead and make you a 0 clearance as well. And then for this video, I already had these two, so I went ahead and made a 45 degrees 0 clearance. I did find I'd never made one of these before. This was a little trickier. I'm not going to get in a whole lot of details on this. I'll tell you a little bit more about it later, but they're all about the same. So obviously, if you're using a dado stack, the metal is not going to work for obvious reasons. Your dado stack is wider, and it will not, well, I mean, if you want to tear up your blade, go ahead and run through this. So you have to have or make a custom throat plate for your dado stack. Now the 0 clearance, I mentioned that. This is a 0 clearance. Basically, it's the same exact width as your table saw blade, and whenever you're cutting small pieces and stuff like that, they won't fall down into your table saw, which can be really annoying, as we all know. There are some people out there that claim that this makes a cleaner cut as well. I find no evidence of that, and I do not believe that. But hey, to each their own. To make your throat plate, it's a very, very simple process. First thing you're going to need is a piece of 1/4-inch birch plywood. It doesn't have to be birch, I guess. 1/4-inch piece of plywood, that's what I've used for all of mine. Works great. Then you're going to go ahead and remove your throat plate from your saw. And this is ultimately going to be your template. From there, you're going to take it over to your piece of wood. I suggest your piece of wood be big enough for however many throat plates you're going to be making. And you're going to ultimately trace this out onto your wood. Trace everything. The outside, the screw holes. Go ahead and trace it all on there, because you don't know if you'll want to use some of it later for references or whatever. I just trace it all on there. Now for the next part, you're going to either need a bandsaw or a jigsaw. I don't have a bandsaw, so I used my jigsaw. All you're going to do is you're going to clamp a piece down, if you're using a jigsaw, and then you're going to go around the edge with your jigsaw. Now, make sure when you're cutting around the edge, stay right on the outside of that line, because you want that line for reference later on when you're sanding it down, so you can sand it in and get that perfect fit. Now, this part you can either do later or whenever you want, but at this point, I went ahead and I took a 7/32 drill bit and I drilled out those holes. Those are going to be for your adjustment screw holes later on, and I just did it at this point. I'm not done here. I come back later and I'll show you. Next thing I did is I just sanded down the edges. I used about a 60 grit. If you want to do it a little quicker, use a higher grit. If you use a 120, it might take a while. But I did 60 grit. I sanded all around the edges, took it over my table saw, see how it fit, brought it back, and you just do that back and forth until you get the perfect fit for your saw. Now at this point is where I finished out those drill holes. And what I did in this case is I used a Forstner bit, I believe a 3/8, and I went and made the underside of those 7/32 holes for the adjustment screws bigger and kind of deeper. And basically this is where those set screws or adjustment screws for your table saw, your throat plate, are going to set in. And the reason why I do that is, let me show you an example, is my throat plate is thicker than the one that came with my saw. So the one I made is thicker than the one that came with my saw. So on this one, I didn't use a Forstner bit. You have multiple options, which is great in woodworking. I just took this and brought it up to my table saw and just cut in a little bit just to remove that area for the screws so they had something to set on. That might be the easiest way. This one I wanted to try something different, so I used the Forstner bit and I just made the holes a little bit bigger and it seemed to work. Now from here, you've got the perfect fit and everything's setting in your saw just right. What you're going to do next is you're going to set it in there onto your saw. You're going to tape it all down nice and tight. You're going to turn your saw on, and this is with your blade already lowered. You wouldn't be able to set it on there if it wasn't. But then you're going to just turn the saw on, slowly raise the blade up. You're going to run it all the way up as far as it can go through that throat plate. And then that's it. You can lower your blade, turn off your saw, take it off. From there, if you're doing this with just your dado stack throat plate, you're basically done. You're more than welcome to sand this down a little smoother, put some paste wax on it if you want, put some lacquer, whatever you want to do to it. But from there, you're basically done. Now, if you're going to be doing a zero clearance, 90 degree, or zero clearance, 45 degree, you're going to need to make room for your riving knife. And if you think for 1 second you're not going to be using your riving knife, you're high. Because that's your first line of safety, and if you're not using your riving knife, you are dead wrong. Make sure you're at least using your riving knife. There's no reason not to, for real. But you're going to need room for it on the zero clearance or the 45. Now, for this video, mainly I was just kind of telling you about the dado clearance, but really all these go hand in hand. And like I said, if you're going to make one, you may as well make them all. I will say that today, when I was making this video, I did the 45 degree, and it was a little bit more tricky to make. All because of the riving knife area. So what I did to get this longer for my riving knife, the 45 degree angle, is I just took my jigsaw, I set it at 45 degrees, made sure it matched what the saw had made, and then I just extended it. That's how I did that portion. Now, taping it down with this was a little bit more tricky, because one good thing about the dado stack throat plate is your dado blades are only 8 inches. So this sets in there nice and easy, doesn't touch your saw blade. Whereas, oh, that's probably loud. Whereas on my 45 and my zero clearance, they kind of touch the saw blade. So you kind of got to be careful. I didn't put it down real tight. I just kind of loosely taped it and then slowly, let the blade, turn the blade on, and then slowly kind of push this down around the blade. Once the blade started going through, you can turn your saw off. You can tape it down more securely and then run it all the way through. That's what I had to do with my saw. Some saws, the blade may drop all the way down far enough where you don't have any issues. My blade doesn't go down that far. Now, if you feel like you need to stiffen it up a little bit, if it feels like the middle's a little, flexible, what I did is I took a 1/4 inch piece of oak and I just glued it in there. This is on my zero clearance, and that gave it the support I needed. Stiffened it right up. I mean, there's all kinds of things you can do with it. This video is just the basics, and you can get as creative as you want with this. Another, an example of getting creative, on my zero clearance, I made a spot for my finger to pull it up, so you can add that. That's why I traced that on this. I haven't completed it yet, and I'll get a drill bit and I'll probably mess around with this later. Right now it's pretty easy to pull on and off. I'm not even sure if I like this 45 degree one yet, but a lot of times when I'm doing 45 degree cuts and cutting off those little shavings, it's always on the other side of the blade that really bugs me. It sets in there. So hopefully this keeps it from setting in there and allows it just kind of move off on the side, if you know what I mean. You can buy these throat plates for your saw. There's also people that make them with laser cutters and all that, and they sell them online. They sell them on Etsy, probably eBay, Pinterest. I'm sure they sell them all over the place. But hey, that to me, that takes the fun out of it. Every time you make something, you learn something new. And this is an opportunity to learn something new. So it's worth making. If you just don't like them, then go ahead and buy you one. I think there's I'll link it actually. I'll go ahead and link it. There's somebody selling them on Amazon, at least for the Delta. I don't know what all saws they work for. It looked like it worked for quite a few saws, but I know it works for mine. But he gives you 3 plates. So basically you can take those 3 plates, make one dado, one 090, and one 045, and you have all 3 of yours. So it's up to you. Anyway, it's a quick, easy project. I hope it helps you all out and maybe have some fun with it. I'll see y'all next time.